Hey everyone, my name is Rich, and this is Rich Talks Records. Episode 30 something or another. Maybe it's 36, maybe it's 37. I don't actually remember. But anyway, wanted to do a fun little video today. I actually want to start a kind of bunch of little sub-series of videos on this channel. So this is going to kind of be the first one. I have one coming in a couple months that I'm really excited to do. But I thought I would get started at this. So theoretically, the books video could be the beginning of another series. Also theoretically, doing all of every record that Iggy Pop ever made could also kind of be seen as a series. I suppose the Public Image Limited videos are a series at this point. But at any rate, I wanted to kind of deliberately, self-consciously start one that I will dip into periodically. And so it took a while for me to conceptualize this because I had initially just grabbed a bunch of things off the shelf and thought I would hit play and record and off we go, but I decided to pare it down. Today are 10 great or 10 fun music documentaries or rock and roll documentaries, some of my very favorites, and I'll just say a few words about each one and hopefully encourage you to check them out if you haven't seen them already. So the two that are going to be at the end of this video are definitely number 1 and number 2. The rest of these, so those are ranked. The rest of these are not ranked. You can fill them in. You can use your imaginations to fill them in. So the first one is who is Harry Nilsson and why is everybody talking about him? And this came out in 2010. Good Lord. Anyway, that was a long time ago. 2010. Amazing. Were we ever so young? Unfortunately, we were. But this is an amazing documentary. It really manages to touch upon kind of all the key surviving people. It's amazing that they managed to get as many people as they did to sit for interviews. The lone holdout, of course, is Ringo. It would have been very, very insightful to have Ringo in here. But other than that, they managed to get everybody else. And in particular, Van Dyke Parks, Rich Talks Records' favorite, Van Dyke Parks, does an amazing job and is, I think, particularly adroit in his observations and analysis of Harry. But just a great testament to what he was as a person and as an artist. And I think it helps really paint the picture of just what a remarkable genius of an artist he was. And does a commendable job of shifting the focus away from him being one of the Beatle people. And one of the things that I think is a little frustrating sometimes with, let's say, for instance, the Phil Ochs documentary, which I do like and I did think about putting in this video. But there's always, with Phil Ochs, there's always some yutz who pops up behind a shrub or something and says, you know, he was more important than Bob Dylan, or he was a better songwriter than Bob Dylan. And that is so preposterous. I mean, it would be as preposterous if every time somebody mentioned the Small Faces, the same person was, you know, they were better than the Rolling Stones. And it's a completely different thing. And yes, they were both folk singers in New York, right? But for the love of God, you can talk about Phil Ochs and you can talk about Phil Ochs' greatness without having to invoke Bob Dylan. They really have nothing to do with each other in the grand scheme of things. And ultimately, you can tell the story of Harry Nilsson without him being one of the Beatle people. Yeah, there's a lot of intersection, but Harry's incredible body of work stands very well enough on its own, thank you very much, as this documentary attests. So, moving right along, we get to one of the great genre explorations of all time. Again, they got a hell of a lot of people to sit for this thing. I don't know how they did it. And that is, of course, American hardcore. I definitely discovered a few bands from this, but it is, as a film, I think does a much better job than what Our Band Could Be Your Life achieved. So the only other thing I would add to this is, and I think this is out free on YouTube, but I have seen it in other places, the Clockwork Orange County documentary is almost kind of like an edition of this. So if you have seen this or have never seen this, go also check the Clockwork Orange County documentary that's more focused on like the Cuckoo's Nest scene, but also remarkable, and they get great interviews out of people. But this is just a fantastic summation of a very specific point in time. They are far more, what's the word, sort of formalist punk rockers in a lot of ways, and this is coming from a very specific point of view. What's funny is I think that the book of this film, and I don't remember which one came first, and I do have the book somewhere. I'm looking if it's on these shelves or on the shelves in the back. At any rate, I do have the book somewhere around here. I actually think the film is a bit more successful than the book. The book definitely has far more of a hyper-specific tone and perspective. But this is just a great film, and I can't recommend it enough. Now, a completely different type of documentary about a world away from American hardcore. If you're familiar with the genius photographer Robert Frank, you'll already know where this is heading. But if you've ever seen his book of photographs, The Americans, it's one of the great collections of photography ever. And just his work in general. I mean, I think he is truly, truly, along with, to my mind, sort of him, Ouija, and Robert Mapplethorpe are three of the really, really big guns of American photography that are just totally, totally incredible. And you don't really have to know that much about photography to be amazed at what they achieved. But Robert Frank made a movie, made a documentary. He also made an album cover. You'll see how all this connects. And that is, of course, the little scene, but very, very amazing, Cocksucker Blues from, I think it actually came out in 1973. This has never been officially released by the Stones. I have had a few different versions of this over the years. This was, when did I get this? This was 2004. So this was another upgraded version. It has a ton of bonus material on it that is really, really remarkable. Special definitive edition, I would say, yeah, that's true. I don't know if they have re-released this ever since, because I'm perfectly happy with this one. The first one I had would have been on VHS and was horrible and really grainy and awful and made me think that the film itself was bad. No, the film itself is an absolute masterpiece and truly captures the decadent apathy, the decadent offstage apathy, if that is such a thing, and those are not just directly contradicting each other. But what an incredible film, absolutely fascinating, and the stuff that's like staged for the camera, when you know that it's staged for the camera, feels that much more staged, which makes it actually that much more interesting, as opposed to detracting from the reality of the cinema verite. Anyway, amazing, amazing film. Cannot recommend it enough. Moving right along, and this is a film I referenced in a previous video, from 1995, Nico Icon. And this is, yes, I have this on VHS. This particular VHS copy please rewind tape, may or may not have been liberated from a now defunct video rental chain. I cannot confirm or deny that happened. But this is kind of a pretty harrowing documentary. I think it probably was intended as a straightforward documentary, but Nico's child, Ari, is interviewed in this, and it's pretty intense, and she had a pretty intense life. So, well worth watching. I don't think there is any real availability of this right now. So you would probably have to rely on the powers of the internet to seek this out. But it is very, very much worth your time. Nico was very enigmatic, and it truly captures the mystery of vacancy of Nico. Also, trawling the VHS, and speaking of grainy, this was my VHS copy of Bob Dylan, Bob Dylan's documentary, I guess it's a documentary, of his fabled 1966 tour of Europe, Eat the Document. And there was a now defunct video store that I got this from called Video Beat. They were around for a long time. I got a hell of a lot from that place. I have not actually ever, and this is just my handwriting on the VHS tape. I have, for some reason, never have gotten a DVD or a Blu-ray copy of this. I'm pretty, there's probably like a million different variations of this now out on YouTube, etc. But this surprisingly looked very good. The back cover art is incredible, as you can see. This also has the Quest TV show, which I referenced in my World Gone Wrong video, that has Bob playing in in Canada on Canadian television, and it's very curious. It's like a set of like a log cabin, and Dylan is playing folk songs, mostly stuff off his second album for, I don't know if they were loggers or actors hired to look like loggers. I have no idea. But it's a very curious, strange performances. Dylan wanders around this faux log cabin coffee shop / breakfast place or maybe a bar, as these actors or actual loggers stare forlorn, contemplating the depths of their existences, and Bob meanders around playing guitar. So that's also very interesting. But Eat the Document is edited in 1967. It was shot by D.A. Pennebaker, right? I believe so. And it is a weird, fragmentary, strange beast of a film that kind of mirrors his strange, fragmentary book, Tarantula, from the same time. I love it. I think it's really cool. I've always loved watching it. Most of that footage then has been mined for like the Martin Scorsese No Direction Home documentary, and I would hope that at some point they really do put that out. I think that it would be, I think it's kind of a key piece of Dylanology that really should be taken out of bootleg world and put back out into the world. They've already released the entire 1966 tour. Why not release Eat the Document? Then, and to think it was supposed to be a television special, I think, for ABC. Imagine that airing on network television in 1967. That's pretty wild. Another band documentary that is basically perfect. I saw this in the theater. It was amazing. It was a slightly different cut. One of the interview subjects was apparently booed at the screening in LA, according to internet lore, and demanded a recut, that he be cut out of the film. So I actually saw the cut of this that had Black Flag's Greg Ginn speaking in it. But this will make you a fan of the band. This will make you love the band. And if you love the band already, you will only understand them more and love them more deeply. And that is We Jamicano. It's the documentary about the Minutemen. This is basically a perfect documentary. George Hurley is a fantastic interview subject because he's a master of horse sense, and he is such a likable person, but also really, really intelligent in a kind of non-intellectual way. And he's just so matter of fact that I love him as a drummer, but I really come away admiring and respecting him as a person. D. Boon, obviously, D. Boon wasn't around. Archival interviews are amazing. He was a brilliant, brilliant guy. Obviously, a genius fucking musician and songwriter, obviously. But then you get Mike Watt driving around in an Econoline, and Watt waxes philosophical, as he should, because he has the brain power to do it, and he is worth listening to. And his tangents, or spiels in Minutemen speak, are always worth listening to and always interesting. So the balance of the surviving Minutemen, of Watt waxing philosophical versus George just, where the rubber meets the road, is a beautiful contrast. And then they have a million other interview subjects, all the major SST bands, basically. And it's absolutely incredible, and you come away loving them. You come away wanting to make your own art. You come away wanting to check out other art out of this. There's a point where Watt is talking about how there were the twin themes of the double nickels on the dime record and how nobody understood them at the time. And he kind of very quietly says, but that's okay. That's why we do things like this. And you're just like, fuck yeah, that's why we do things like this. It's beautiful. It's just such a wonderful moment. And Watt, he's in the Econoline, but then he's also interviewed, I guess, in his house with a Raymond Pettibone like tribute painting to him, just sort of off to the side, right? And it's a beautiful, beautiful painting or drawing, I guess, from Pettibone. So that, just as a contrast, is also really cool. The DVD set, I have no idea what the availability is. There is a really, really, really shit version of this on YouTube that is fuzzy as all hell. But this the extras have tons and tons of live performances. This is one of those films where the deleted scenes are as crucial as the film itself, because it just goes into all sorts of other details and down all sorts of other roads. There is a wealth of like VHS shot footage on here, but the live performances and all the additional scenes, the music videos, this thing is incredible. This is easily as important as getting one of their albums, and is just a crucial component of loving the band and understanding the band. Cannot recommend this enough. Incredible. Moving right along, we have one of the first rock and roll documentaries that I ever saw, and I think I was too young to kind of appreciate it. Saw it again many years later, late night on cable, and really fell in love with it and appreciated it in a whole different way. And this, unfortunately, this version of it now appears to have gone the way of the dodo, which is a real crime. But this is Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, starring Chuck Berry. And yes, it focuses mostly around the concert helmed by Keith Richards and Eric Clapton and Robert Cray. And Robert Cray is in it, I think. Actually, I might be wrong about that. But and it reunites Chuck Berry with his piano player Johnny Johnson. But this is really, really an amazing documentary, an amazing piece of American heritage art, setting Chuck out to be filmed and tell his own story in his own way in St. Louis is really remarkable and really interesting. Yes, Chuck has his own version of things, but I always maintain he has his right to tell his story as he sees fit. And I think the documentary does a very good job of respectfully correcting the record here and there, but it is remarkable. I think that Chuck Berry is one of the true great American geniuses. I think, no disrespect to Elvis, but to me there are really two kings of rock and roll. There's Chuck and there is Little Richard. One is the brain and one is the heart. One is the mind, one is the physical. And Chuck was a brilliant visionary, incredible musician, incredible lyricist, brilliant. And yes, he was a strange, complicated man, but I'm willing to ride that out. And the other thing, and the reason why I say that this is in particular a disservice is being done to culture by this not being available, is this is the 4-disc version, and in and among they have these sections, the Witnesses to History, and in particular the Witnesses to History section. So some of that is cut into the film proper, but the Witnesses to History, specifically the scene where they have Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and Bo Diddley all sitting in the same room around a piano, as they tell stories about the lives they lived and what they had to deal with in order to make this music and truly be rebels and truly live and invent the rock and roll lifestyle and the musical, the art form itself. is incredible. And if there's anything being taught in schools, it should be that. I mean, that's very, very, again, crucial bedrock American history stuff. And so if you can find a version of this, or if you can harness the powers of the internet, by God, do yourself a favor and check this stuff out. It is absolutely phenomenal. So hopefully, if there's any justice left in this world, this would be available in some form. I tried looking it up a few years ago because I was going to buy a copy of this for my friend Van, and it was going for like $400 or some craziness. So at any rate, and it's one of those situations where the witnesses to history are kind of maybe even more valuable in a way than the actual key film itself. So then we get to, oh boy, this is this is a trilogy of films. I'm just going to sort of count it as one, and the third of which I've watched a couple times. It's fine, it's interesting, but it's certainly the far lesser of the Godfather 3, if you will, of the trilogy. But that is Penelope Spheris's, this is the Blu-ray set, The Decline of Western Civilization. I first saw The Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years, as a very young person. Here is that. It was one of my introductions to music. It would have been in 1990. And MTV was airing it after they had aired the Headbangers Ball Decade of Metal Marathon, a celebration of the young, loud, and lusty. So they had Ricky Rackman and two members, Tommy Lee and Vince Neil of Motley Crue. They aired something like, I don't remember how long it was, like 4 hours or something of heavy metal videos, a few songs from every year of the 1980s. It was the first time I saw a lot of videos. It was like the first time I ever saw footage of Kiss and makeup. I mean, go down the list. It was a hugely eye-opening experience for me. But they also showed this. They showed wrong discs. Showed this, and it was a highly weirdly edited film, edited for television, but also edited weirdly for MTV's broadcast standards of the time, which were sort of almost like there was regular television censorship, but then there was almost like the MTV equivalent of the Hays Code, like enforced over that. So the editing was really weird. And even now, watching the unexpurgated version of the film is a little bit of a head scratcher, because I will anticipate certain cuts, and it does not correspond with what I would have taped off of television as a 12-year-old or whatever, however old that would have been. You're 12, yeah. So at any rate, this is really amazing. But the meat of the matter is a film, and this was unavailable for many years. Thankfully, it is now out there everywhere. But I actually had a bootleg version of this that I had gotten on a bootleg DVD at some point. And my favorite thing that I wanted to show is there's this little business card in here, important DVD info, and it says, if at first this DVD won't start, press stop, then press play. And that always cracked me up. So this is what I had for several years, but then finally the whole thing came out. And now the whole thing, fortunately, is available digitally, but the real meat of the matter, obviously. So the second one is great, and the second one has tons of great footage. The Megadeth footage of them doing Hour of Need, of course, is amazing. The Ozzy interviews are amazing. That ridiculous Paul Stanley interview is great. Chris Holmes with the vodka bottle, and then Lemmy on the. I wish there was more Lemmy in it. Lemmy on the mountaintop that's amazing. Which I guess mirrors the what's his face, the owner, Brendan Mullen, the owner of the Mask in the first film. I guess there are some parallels, but the real meat of the matter is, of course, the first one, obviously. And the first one I would have first seen in 1992 with my first girlfriend. There was a Blockbuster Video not far from her house, and I would get dropped off on sort of day dates by my mom, and her and I would walk to the video store, and I would always rent. So I have no idea how many times I saw this as a teenager, and specifically as like a 13 or 14-year-old. We watched it constantly. So the footage of Black Flag, unbelievable. I've talked about this film in other videos. The Germs I didn't get, but in retrospect, the Germs footage is amazing, and the best film footage of them. Fear, again, Fear, holy Christ. And I thought it was cool when I was 14, but this footage of Fear now is like that much more unbelievable. I really wish there was just a whole show of that, and they had just filmed all of that. But the Bags were, or I guess the Alice Bag Band as they were absolutely incredible. X, it was my introduction to X, and that was great. And then, of course, the fucking Circle Jerks. Holy Christ. I mean, it's the Circle Jerks, and it's that original version of the Circle Jerks, which is just beyond comprehension. Unbelievable band. And is that everybody? Is that everybody other than Catholic Discipline? Because Catholic Discipline is fine. But when you think about the fact that Red Cross, the Minutemen, the Weirdos, for fuck's sake, and for that matter, Eddie and the Subtitles, or on and on and on and on and on and on and on of other LA bands that weren't involved in the film, and Catholic Discipline gets the nod, that is fairly absurd to me. So, no offense to them, but come on. So, at any rate, though, but it is an amazing film, and the footage of Black Flag, again, and the interview footage of Black Flag was monumentally important because I had never seen them before. So it was literally the first time I actually saw them speak and move and talk and play and all of that. So that in and of itself was totally, totally wild to me. So to hear Chuck Dukowski talk was a big goddamn deal for a young Rich. So now I guess we will get to number 1 and number 2, which I'm sure you've been waiting with bated breath. And the number 2 is a film that has never really been properly released, and so I only have a bootleg version of it. There was a version of it out on YouTube. It looks like it has since been pulled. There was actually a point where the extras were also out on YouTube, and that looks like I could not find it. I looked for the purposes of this video to find links. Couldn't find it. So you are on your own. It does look like it has had screenings. I'm hoping that it gets some sort of release. This band finally is now going to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, if that sort of thing matters to you. I'm not really sure why it would, but the reason why they got in is I am convinced that there was, it's because there needs to be a blood sacrifice for bands that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame people don't consider popular enough to let into their lauded institution. So the weird blood sacrifice phenomenon continues, whether it's Lou Reed or whether it was Ron Ashton. For some reason, someone must pass away in order to be elevated into the... It's a very strange pattern, and there have been other ones too that I'm forgetting, but those are the two that stick out. And that, of course, is the MC5. So now there is Wayne Kramer, sadly passed away, was a couple months ago, and so it's horrible. But they now are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's why the world works that way is a mystery. But only Dennis Thompson is left. But I hope to high heaven that this film comes out at some point, and that is the MC5, A True Testimonial. I bought this. When did I get this? It's copyrighted, weirdly, as of 2004, but I would have gotten this in the 2010s. I was traveling somewhere and I went to some record store. I don't even remember what the circumstances were anymore. And I saw this in the rack, whatever the hell town I was in whatever year. It would have been the early 2010s. Maybe I was traveling for work, I don't know. But I couldn't believe that it was there. And it was kind of like, I just sort of snatched it, like, oh my God, how is this a thing? So, because I had heard about it for years. There was a rights dispute with the music, and Wayne Kramer would not grant the rights to the music. I don't understand what any of that was about. I really don't know. I'm not sure why they were able to do screenings of it while Wayne was alive. I don't understand what any of that stuff is. It's the same thing with Cocksucker Blues. Apparently, it can be aired, like, I read some article about it like 10 years ago. There's some weird dictates around it that it has to be aired in like a university setting and only one time in a continent in like a 6-year span. There's like some weird shit around it, and this appears to be the same thing. Anyway, this is one of the greatest band documentaries ever made. They had, so at this point, Fred Sonic Smith and Rob Tyner were already deceased. Rob Tyner has archival interview footage. I don't think they have anything from Fred Sonic Smith. Maybe there's some radio interview stuff, but I don't really remember hearing Fred Smith's speaking voice particularly. But oh my God, the interviews with Michael Davis, the interviews with, oh my God, Dennis Machine Gun Thompson, holy Christ. Dennis Thompson steals the film. I mean, good Lord. You really come away loving that guy. I don't know how you couldn't love that guy. What a brilliant, wonderful fucking cat, and one of the greatest drummers that ever lived, my God. But truly, like Michael Davis, like there's a couple things that Michael Davis says that are just like some of the best things that I've ever heard anybody in a rock and roll band say. And then there's Wayne Kramer, who's a born talker and a great talker. John Sinclair, who also recently passed away. John Sinclair was not always my favorite person, I'll put it that way. There are times where I've read not great things about John Sinclair. But John Sinclair does really good interviews in here, and comes off as, for lack of a better way of putting it, comes off as understandable and relatable. And sometimes Sinclair didn't, or Sinclair could kind of be really bullish to a fault sometimes. But Sinclair comes off really well. They have some ex-girlfriends and or ex-wives interviewed. They're really awesome and really interesting. And it is just the MC5 have a wild story. It's one of the wildest rock and roll stories that you could ever imagine. And it's probably like top 3 of like truly like sticking it to the man rock and roll stories, and rebellious in a way that probably most people wouldn't dare to be rebellious, and doing it without any real sort of protection, because the second that they went outside the lines of Elektra Records, Elektra dropped them immediately, right? So, but the thing about this, and so the reason I mention this is, not only is it a masterpiece of a film, because it is a masterpiece of a film. I cannot rate it highly enough. But truly, the bonus features, the live performances. I think it's a Cincinnati pop festival from, I want to say, 1970. Those performances, and a lot of that stuff has shown up on YouTube. Those are on here. Those are amazing. The testimonials, the true testimonials from the likes of Cheap Trick, Monster Magnet, the Melvins, so this would have been sort of trilogy era Melvins, Primal Scream, and Lemmy Lemmy gets another mention in this, are again awesome and insightful and interesting and smart and funny. But really, the deleted scenes and the outtakes are as good as the film itself, kind of like a mirror of the Minutemen film. Lot of essential stuff, lot of stuff that's really worth seeing, and you also have more time with Dennis Thompson, who gets to further elucidate his points and philosophies, which are fucking right on. He's about as right on as it gets. And these guys, they were creative geniuses. They were they're not even ahead of their time. They're outside of time. One of the greatest rock and roll bands that ever lived. Absolutely brilliant. It's rare that you have a band with 5 truly brilliant people, like truly like iconoclastic people. It's almost hard to imagine that you had one band that had Rob Tyner, Wayne Kramer, Fred Sonic Smith, Michael Davis, and Dennis Thompson in it. Like, each of those guys could just carry their own band. Each of those guys could just be their own band leader. The fact that you had 5 of them, and the fact that they had that intensive of a mind meld, amazing. So I cannot praise this to the skies enough. Seek it out. And then finally, I guess the number one, and so this video should have been shot hours ago, but I could not find my damn copy of this thing. I do have a VHS of it that I taped off of television in, I want to say 2002. I still have that somewhere. But I do have the DVD of this, and I really don't know what happened to it. So I will just take a moment and say that I sometimes reference that I can't find things. And it is amazing to me that... So I used to have, like, all of my books and movies and records rigorously organized. So it was not only organized by letters. So these, as you can see by this microphone set, these are the M's, right? The L's are here, Lydia Lunch, and then we get into the M's. The M's extended to here. Here's Nirvana, so that's the beginning of the end. So I have this alphabetized, right? But what I am working towards is the way that I used to have it. It not only was alphabetized by letter, but it was also alphabetized by artist. Okay, and then, so the MC5, for instance, would be coming before the microphones, for instance, right? But it was also then, each artist was organized chronologically. So it would be, right, like, Kick Out the Jams, back in the USA, High Time, and then any subsequent releases, blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. So I had my records, like, and I also had I had films done that way, and I had books done that way by author, not subject. And I actually kept lists, and every time I would go buy records, I would duly update my little WordPerfect documents and all that, and I kept that running for years. That all broke down during the divorce years. It's a very long story, but I still have never gotten everything fully back up and running. We moved here in 2018, and I keep chipping away at it. Part of the problem is I keep buying more. And also part of the issue is that we have expanded the shelving. And also part of the problem was, at one point, my mom, God bless her, I love you, Mom, but my mom, during COVID, hired some unlicensed movers, and they dropped off a moving truck worth of stuff. I thought we were maybe going to get some of my things and some, like, furniture, but no, we got a moving truck full of stuff put down here that took forever to sort out, and was like multiple got junk trips, and was a big goddamn bloody mess. So I am still slowly but surely working my way through. So I have all the records on the shelf. I have CDs and cassettes and everything. I have box sets over there. I have stuff down here, but it's at least alphabetized, so I can at least find things quickly. But there are still some things that I just don't know whatever the hell happened to them. So it kind of is heartbreaking and really, really frustrating that there's still some things that I cannot locate. I literally spent hours looking for this. But the number one, I've delayed this far too long, so you're just going to have to imagine that I'm holding it up. The Sex Pistols, The Filth and the Fury by Julian Temple, okay? I will hold this up instead. This is the classic albums, Making of Nevermind the Bollocks. The Filth and the Fury is the greatest band documentary ever made because it is the most formal as a film. Julian Temple, I feel, really did do it as a corrective to the great rock and roll swindle. The band also, the way that it is stylized, the band are all filmed in silhouette as if it's like a true crime documentary, and they are like they were in the mob or something, and they're recounting the illicit doings and goings on. It's a beautiful visual conceit, but also the fact that you never see them, that you only see the Sex Pistols in archival footage, and then Julian Temple's like amazing ability to weave in contemporary footage and create really kind of like almost like visual subplots. And he's masterful at that. He's masterful at connecting images together in sort of a Godardian kind of way to create additional layers of understanding and context. It is a phenomenal film. I first saw it in the theater with this ridiculous punk rock girl that I was sort of dating. I don't know if you can date somebody when both people are dating other people, but whatever the hell it was a really stupid thing that was happening, situation. I don't know if you could even call it a relationship, but we saw it I saw it with this really, really absurd fucking girl, and I actually cried. I actually tears came out in the theater. John Lydon cries about Sid. John Lydon breaks down, and I broke down after John Lydon broke down. And it is a phenomenal film. It makes you understand that band because it cuts through all the weird layers of irony. It cuts through all the machinations of McLaren. It cuts through all of the mockumentary stuff and dubious claims as posited by the great rock and roll swindle, and it just it cuts to the heart of the matter. It cuts to the story of these four incredibly dispossessed working class kids who didn't have a future and created one for themselves. And it is a remarkable story. Also, Lydon talks about Olivier's portrayal of, I believe it's Richard III, and thus, and compares himself to, because he was influenced by Olivier's portrayal of Richard III, and one of the many ways in which Julian Temple outdoes himself as a filmmaker, is he weaves in scenes from Richard III to tremendous effect that heighten the dramatic impact of the telling of the story. It's the best thing that's ever been done. A lot of people have tried to tell punk stories. A lot of people, Julian Temple leaves everybody in the dust. I cannot recommend it enough. Now, that being said, and it's an amazing film and one of my all-time favorites, and I can't believe I can't find the goddamn DVD. But anyway, I would also, and this is definitely out there on YouTube, but it's also out on lots of other, this has been disseminated across the streaming services pretty prolifically, we'll say it that way. But this is the classic albums. And why I also throw this in is because if you watch The Filth and the Fury, you're like, holy fuck, this is amazing. I would strongly urge you to go and check this out, because this is almost like the unofficial sequel to The Filth and the Fury. It's sort of treated that way. And John Lydon, in particular, uses it as a corrective for some of the things that he actually got wrong in The Filth and the Fury. Because again, you have all four guys, and so this is like a great alternate cut almost of The Filth and the Fury, and it tells the tale not as vividly or poetically. However, the accuracy is even greater. Also, some of the greatest John Lydon quotes of all time, things that are kind of bedrock beliefs of mine, are spoken here. Some of the wise words that have come from the man's mouth have emanate from this. And, Steve Jones, I love Steve. He's always funny. Again, it's that kind of, it's interesting. You have the guy that waxes philosophical, and then you have the guy who's where the rubber meets the road. And Steve is just such a great kind of no BS guy that I love the interaction between those two minds, And I love Glenn. I love them all. They're the fucking Sex Pistols. They're my band. I love them. So anyway, that is just a fun video. Hopefully it was fun, of some great rock and roll documentaries. I would strongly urge you to check out any of these. If you have seen any of these and you love them, or have thoughts on them, please leave comments below, or let me know some ones that you love. I was going to do an honorable mention video section of this, but I think I might just save that for another video. And I do want to sort of have a sub-series where I do talk about music, movies, and music-related movies. So this is going to be something that'll pop up now and again, and I have a lot of other videos that are in various stages of development, so I will have another one soon enough, hot on the heels of this one. But I hope that you've enjoyed watching this. Excuse me. And if If you enjoyed this, please like and comment, and most importantly, subscribe. Let's go from unsubs to subs, and all the other wonderful YouTube things. And otherwise, hope you're doing well out there. And like I said, if you have any recommendations or you have any thoughts on any of these, please let's get a conversation going. And otherwise, I will be back soon enough, very, very soon. So I will see you in the next video. Bye!